and observe a moment of silence in remembrance of all those who have passed on as a result of COVID-19 in this country and elsewhere in the world, but also to honor the doctors, nurses, and other health workers who are in the front line in the fight against the pandemic. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Molefe. Thank you very much for coming back to the Commission to continue with your evidence. We appreciate your commitment to helping the Commission. I think you are coming to the Commission probably for the 6th time. We really appreciate it. We understand that it might mean some inconvenience in terms of your other work, but we appreciate that you continue to show your commitment to supporting the Commission.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'm a pension.
Thank you very much. You may be seated, Mr. Molefe. Oh, I think there will need to be the swearing, the oath first, because it's been a long time. But before that, I don't know, Mr. Soni might be wishing to say something. I have been advised that it is acceptable that whenever I speak or you speak, Mr. Soni, as well as the witness, we take off the mask and then we put it back when we are not speaking. Of course, we intend observing the social distance, but I don't think there is enough space between Swelile here, with just one chair in between. I don't think is enough. I think you need to move further up. Otherwise, I'm looking around, I think there is otherwise enough social distancing. Thank you very much. Mr. Soni? Please put on your mic.
Sorry, Chairperson. That is according to the advice we've received as well, Chairperson. Ms. Molefe.
Okay, all right. Then we can do the oath. Thank you.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Popo Molefe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
I do not.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Soni. You might need to just reorientate everybody where we left off with Mr. Molefe's evidence in the past and where we are continuing from.
Mr. Chairperson, you will recall that the last issue that we canvassed with Mr. Molefe was the meeting on the 20th of August 2015, at which former President Zuma attempted to persuade Mr. Molefe to ask his board to take Mr. Montana back after he had resigned. And this was about 6 weeks after he had left the organization on the 15th of July 2015. And then you'll also recall, Mr. Chairperson, that Mr. Molefe, in dealing with that matter, dealt with a meeting that he had held with the top 6, asking them to create some semblance of normality at PRASA on account of the attacks that Mr. Montana had been making against Mr. Molefe and the board.
Just 1 second. The aircon seems to be on. It doesn't feel like it's a heater. It's like it's making us cold. So I think somebody will attend to that. Okay.
Mr. Chairperson, may I ask if I can just very briefly deal with that matter, because you will recall that one of the questions I asked, and you also asked, Mr. Chairperson, was whether it made sense that the board was being asked to take Mr. Montana back, given the background circumstances of which everybody knew. And you will recall that Mr. Molefe said that it had been widely reported in the media. We have since then, Mr. Chairperson, and we've augmented the file, and at pages 222 to page 258.
Let us just indicate what exhibit number that file is.
Yes, it is Bundle D, Exhibit SS6.
And what page?
So the articles are at 222 to 258, Chairperson.
That would be the same file that Mr. Molefe has got in front of him, is that right?
That is so, Chairperson, yes.
Okay. Page 222, that's where they start.
That is so.
Yeah. But they didn't seem, when I was looking at this file, they didn't seem to be arranged according to dates.
The articles themselves are not according to
themselves.
dates, Chairperson.
Why not? I thought that they would go from the earliest up to, when you try to follow the story.
Yes.
I had to try and see which one is supposed to be first. You see, for example, at page 222, you have got an article of 7 August 2015, and at page 238, you have got an article of 26 July 2015. I mean, that is 26, and then at page 243, you have got an article of 23 July 2015.
Yes.
They should have been arranged
They should have been arranged chronologically, yes.
Yes. So that one could see the build-up. This is how the reporting started,
yes.
and how it built up to the date of the meeting.
Yes.
In terms of what everyone must have been seeing in the media.
Yes. Chairperson, can I?
I don't know whether it can be changed.
It will be done,
Yes,
Chairperson,
yes.
because with respect to Chair, you are absolutely right. That is how it should have been done. I didn't.
Okay. The only problem, of course, is that when you refer to the articles now, if you mention the page numbers, and the page numbers are going to change,
Yes.
it will be a problem with the transcript. But it may be that later on, when this has been changed, arrangements can be made for you to place on record what the latest page numbers will be. Okay, all right.
I apologize.
Okay. It's quite dark where I am. I don't know whether there's anything that can be done about it. I know that last time there was that same issue, but we'll continue in the meantime.
Yes, please, Chairperson. Chairperson, may I say in regard to the articles?
Just 1 second. It may well be if there are problems in getting me to have better lighting here, it may well be that a desk light might help, so that when I want to read, I can see the words clearly. So, yeah, okay, all right.
Chairperson, it is not my intention in referring to the articles to go into any depth. The idea is merely, again, to emphasize the point that it just made no sense. And it was in the public arena that there was this incompatibility between Mr. Montana and the board.
Well, apart from any incompatibility, I think for me what is most important is the fact that is the question whether the articles which were in the media made it reasonable for us to expect that people who normally read what's in the media would have been aware that at PRASA there are all these very serious allegations of corruption that was alleged to have been taking place, so that whatever proposals or decisions people were making, they were making them being aware of all of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Molefe?
I think that it would help me a great deal if Mr. Molefe is able, and your questioning can be directed at that, is able to say, based on what I told the top 6, anyone who was in that meeting would have known the following features of corruption at PRASA, because I told them.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, at least some of the important ones.
Yes.
It may be that it's something that he might be able to do without going back to refresh his memory.
Yes.
It may be that it's something that he would prefer to refresh his memory before saying it. So if we don't deal with it now, because he might need to refresh his memory, we can deal with it later when he has had a chance to refresh his memory.
Yes.
But I would like that kind of evidence that makes it quite clear that here are some of the features of corruption or allegations of corruption at PRASA that anyone who was at that meeting was told about.
And Chairperson would respect it was not just allegations of small corruption. This was billions of rands, for example.
Exactly.
So perhaps I should just ask Mr. Molefe whether he would like the time to look at it, or he can talk about it now.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Mr. Molefe, you've heard the exchange between the chairperson and myself, and you understand the issue that arises. Because the whole question is, should something have been done other than calling a meeting on the 20th to say, take Mr. Montana back? But do you want to go through the articles, or do you know them sufficiently?
Chairperson, I do not intend to go through the articles unless Council would like me to do so and refer me to specific ones. I mean, at the time, I read a lot of them, and I did refer earlier on in my evidence to this campaign to vilify the board and to attack the chair of the board, following the fact that in November of 2014, the board had become aware that there was a big tender that had been adjudicated upon, and the chair of the Finance and Capital Investment Committee, who had been the previous chair of the board, had wanted the board that I was chairing to quickly approve that tender for the modernization of the Braamfontein depot, and of course the procurement of the rails and turnouts as part of the preparations for the trains that were going to be coming from Brazil, which were being manufactured in Brazil. And the chairperson would recall that during my evidence, I said that the board had been misled by the former GC, Mr. Montana, who had said that he had a probity report when we had asked for the probity report, because we needed assurance that the process was proper and was clean. It turned out that that report did not exist, and he knew it didn't exist, but he lied to the board. So that's one aspect. Now we expose him, and we stop that tender process for that time. It involved well over 2 billion rand. Then the next time is when we discover and actually insist that Mr. Montana gives a report that, in fact, the public protector was not only investigating PRASA, but had been asking for comment of PRASA on the interim report that she had given to PRASA. The chairperson would recall that Mr. Montana then gave me a file containing that report around March 2015. Now, the series of media reports come after we exposed what appears to be corruption at the time. And of course, we were already saying we've got to investigate, because the Auditor General also complains about the audit of the financial year. Now, there are dots that one can connect, Chairperson. Chairperson will recall that I had also referred to what I said was PRASA in turmoil, and I said it was a report by Mr. Montana. In fact, PRASA in turmoil was a section in the report of Mr. Montana. The real thing is that Mr. Montana had written a detailed report on the 27th of July, addressed to Minister Jeff Radebe, who was in the presidency. I did say that I had gotten a copy from the whistleblower, but I was struggling to find it. I regret that, Chairperson, I'm not computer savvy. I had found it last night, and I read it, but I tried to send it where I could print it. That it looks like I have lost it, so I would need to get some computer experts to assist it. But it is the report to Minister Jeff Radebe on the board of PRASA, recent events at PRASA, a very long report. When one reads that report, there's a link, a connection between the series of media articles and what that report was saying. Because a lot of what we read in these media articles are also contained in that report. And quite clearly, the target in that report, and as can be seen in the articles as well, is the chairman of the board. Is a problematic person. Of course, to some instance, in some instances, the Minister of Transport was also targeted for attacks. So I will look for that report, and then it will assist the chairperson. Now,
maybe before you leave the report, I must just say, I know that Mr. Soni is very happy to hear that the report has been found. I'm very happy that it has been found. I've been very concerned about whether we will ever find it.
Yes.
They will make arrangements to make IT people available to you, because obviously we also want to have the report. You want us to have the report. So if the commission can assist with IT people, that they will be made available to you, and we should
do that.
have.
But Chairperson, Minister Jeff Radebe has got the report. If he wants to help the commission, he too can make the report available.
Well, I was actually thinking, as you were telling me that the report was addressed to him, then it occurred to me that then we could ask him if he still has it. But of course, if you can find it, that will enable us to have it quicker. But the former minister may have to assist with issues relating to some of the matters that have come up here.
If he wants to help the commission.
Yes, no, I'm confident that he will make himself available.
Now, Chairperson, when I'm going to come to the meeting of the top six.
Yes.
But when I read the report last night, it occurred to me that there is an explanation to the question that the chairperson asked. When the chairperson said, "You mean you could start the meeting at 6 and finish at 2? It's a long report, and only Mr. Montana knew what the meeting was about, him, the president, and Mr. Radebe, because he spoke for a long time, talking from the notes, which now turns out that it was in fact that report, which of course Minister Radebe in the meeting denied to have received it. Mr. Montana didn't say, "I wrote this report to Mr. Radebe." I had told Minister before we went to that meeting that I had received this document leaked to me by a whistleblower. And so she wanted Mr. Radebe to give her a copy, and he denied that he had it in that meeting. But it explains why that meeting
Just one
so
second, Mr. Molefe, I want to understand that part. Are you saying that at the meeting, Mr. Montana indicated that he had sent the report to the minister?
No.
Oh, no.
He did not say so, but he was saying things that are contained in that report. Mr. Montana was saying things that were contained in the report. And some of the questions that the president also, or comments he was making, it is clear, are contained in that report. And you see the link between that and these articles. The essence was that I am Lucky Montana. I'm the best group CEO of this organization. I can build PRASA. This board does not want to give me the opportunity to do that. They are destroying me. There's nobody else who can run this organization but me. And I told them that although I said I don't want extension on my contract, I've changed my mind now. If you want me, I can come back. And which is what the president was trying to do. to say, no.
And my recollection is that in your evidence last time, you actually said the president also said Mr. Montana is the best
he
guy
did.
to
He did.
do this job.
Yes. And as I read the report, and of course, when you read these articles, you see what South African Commuters Organization says, Stephen Sangwen is saying in the article, and what Zenzo Mahlangu, I referred to him in my evidence earlier on, he had been the General Secretary of SATAU, whose union was also doing business, of course, with PRASA through, I think, a company called Black Star, but they had a trust called Bashumi, which belonged to the union. So it's a common message. So around which all of these forces were being mobilized against the board, to some extent against the Minister of Transport as well. So now, was corruption widely known at the time? We had already dealt with the Braamfontein depot and we stopped it. We made it clear that we are stopping it because it was irregular and it involved billions of rand. When I briefed the top 6 of the governing party, my party, I referred to the fact that our investigation showed that we've been misled. There was this tender that was about to be issued, which was irregular, and we stopped it. And we are conducting several other investigations which are revealing massive corruption within the organization. So it was known at that time that there was this massive corruption. But the speed in which the media campaign, mass mobilizations, demonstrations, and all these other forces are being mobilized against the board, clearly to me was intended to stop those investigations or to get these people out of the way before the investigations are fully concluded. Now, Chairperson, if you look at what we have seen in this process of state capture itself, and I did say so at the beginning of my evidence as well, that for it to succeed, systems in organizations must be broken, must be weakened. And I did say that good people were being removed from positions and substituted by people who were compliant, who would carry out the agenda, whose objective is the looting of the public purse, and this, the central message being that one of state capture. So here too, suddenly people feel that this board is a problematic board. Corruption cannot continue for as long as these people are in office. But the most problematic one is this one called Popo Molefe, who is the chairman of the board. Yeah. Get him out of the way, and then we can go back to our business as usual. So really that was the agenda. You see vilification, I mean lies that are being told here about me being corrupt, me being doing this and that. And the judgments in courts where evidence arising out of our investigation were presented, confirm the correctness of the positions that we took, and proves a lie of what Mr. Montana and all of these people were saying. Because, I mean, it went right up to the Constitutional Court in some instances. And our position as the Board of PRASA was repeatedly confirmed. So, Chairperson, yes, it was public knowledge. The leaders knew about that corruption.
No, thank you, Mr. Molefe. Why, what was known in the public domain and what you told the top 6 at that meeting is important is because the top 6 are the top leaders of the governing party. And most of them would have been in government as well. And for me, the question arises, if they are told by the chairperson of a board of a government entity such as PRASA, that there is a lot of corruption that we see has been happening or that we think has been happening, and we are taking steps to investigate. I want to know what they did after that about what you told them. I want to know what they did, not from you because you told me already that they never came back to you for anything, but I want to know when they come here, I want to know what they did about that. We are all aware of what is in the public domain about PRASA even now. We are all aware about what is in the public domain about other SOEs, about which there have been a lot of evidence of corruption in this commission, SAA, ESCOM, DENER. And it would appear that these things don't start just now. These things seem to have started a long time ago. And it's only proper that this commission should ask the question to some of those people, where were you? What did you do about this? Did you not have a responsibility to do something? So that's why it's important to me to know, apart from what was in the media, we have the advantage that you had a meeting with the top 6 and you told them, you alerted them. And are there no steps that they ought to have taken, maybe which would have made sure that PRASA is not where it is today in terms of its financial position? And that's part of accountability. And part of what we have to look at, I mean, you were here last time when we touched on the issue of parliamentary oversight. I asked the same questions about Parliament. Where was Parliament when all of these things, all of this corruption appears to have been happening all these years? What were they doing about it? They have a right to call the president and say, what's going on under your government? What's going on with your minister, so-and-so, who is not doing his or her job? They can call the ministers, they can call the DJs, they can follow up, they can put deadlines and say, if you don't fix this by such and such a time, we'll pass a vote of no confidence in the whole cabinet.
Chairperson, if council agrees, at the end of my evidence, I'd like us to do, well, council can tell us when to do it, but I'd like us to do what we will do connecting of the dots.
Yes.
Because
yes.
all of that, and
yes.
it can go right to the various ministers,
yes.
Portfolio committees of
yes.
Parliament,
yes.
Speaker of Parliament,
yeah.
The efforts.
Yes.
I mean, letters we wrote.
You wrote, yes, yes, yes.
All of those things, and then we can say, but what does this mean?
Yeah. And
then when we're busy with this sort of thing and a minister stands in Parliament, says, I'm dissolving this board.
No, certainly that's a very important part.
So we'll have to connect all of those
yeah.
at some point,
yes.
because they give a picture
Yes.
And I may want to ask a tough question as well, which is similar to what the chairperson is saying.
Yes.
That,
No, we will do that, and I'll leave it to council to see where the right time is. It might be at the end, when you have given all the evidence, to then revisit the issue. I have said publicly that I have spoken to the Speaker of Parliament and the Chairperson of the NCOP and said that I think that Parliament may need to start working on the issue of how it has carried out its oversight functions over the past X number of years and be able to come before the Commission at some stage and indicate what is revealed by an exercise of checking. And in particular, I'm looking at the SOEs, specific SOEs about which we have had a lot of evidence here, but also certain government departments and other functionaries to say, what did they do? Did they do their job properly? Because it may well be that if they had done their job the way it should be done, maybe certain things might not have happened. But it may well be that they are able to come here and say, look, these are our limitations in terms of mechanisms that are available to us, and these are our limitations in terms of resources. We went as far as we could. If we are in the future going to be expected to do more, certain changes must be made to enable us to do that. That's fine, but I don't think that this commission can be said to have properly finished its job without hearing what Parliament did. Thank you.
thank you, Chair.
Mr. Molefe, may I just say that I'm pleased you raised the issue of right at the end, connecting all the dots, because I just want to make this comment before we go on with the rest of your evidence. You are in a unique position, as I see it. You have a communication with the President in regard to the matters you've described already, which doesn't make too much sense, and we've debated that. Then your board is dismissed. As you said, instead of Parliament exercising oversight over the minister goes to the Portfolio Committee and announces the dissolvement of the board before them, and she's not asked, but why do you do? I want to raise all those things. And then you go to the police and say, but look, we've got people who are involved in fraud amounting to billions of rands, and they do nothing about it. That's all contained in your evidence. And so I'm pleased you've raised this question, because I was going to do that, but I'm pleased in the sense you've also looked at the big picture. But before we go on with your evidence, there's three matters I want to raise with you in relation to what you've said this morning. You said one of the matters went to the CC. That is the Swifambo matter, am I right?
Oh, yes, it did, sir.
You must tell him, when you say CC, you mean Constitutional Court.
Sorry. I beg your pardon. Yes, to the Constitutional Court, yes. Is that the judgment you are referring to?
That is correct.
And we've been through the fact that both the High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal said there was corruption, and they fingered two people, Mr. Montana and Mr. Mtimkulu. And I mention them because you mentioned them later in your evidence. The second thing I want to ask you is, earlier on you said that the former chairperson of the board wanted to hasten the Braamfontein tender. You recall saying that a little while ago?
Yes, I did say
Who
so.
is the chairperson? Because, I mean, I know I just want a name to it.
The chairperson of my predecessor is currently one of the deputy ministers, Mr. Buthelezi, Fiso Buthelezi.
This is
But
Fiso.
at the time, in November, when he brought the submission, he was the chairperson of the Finance and Capital Investment Committee.
And he, at the same time that Mr. Montana said he was leaving right at the outset of your tenure as chairperson, he also told you he was resigning from the board.
He actually gave me his resignation letter that same day when the board was meeting and he was making the submission for the Bramfontein, on the Bramfontein depot modernization.
So he was pushing this through before he left the board.
Well, that was the last thing, contract he wanted approved before he left. Whether there was a reason for him to have delayed it, or I don't know. Of course, when I read Mr. Montana's report to Minister Jeff Radebe, he blames the board for having delayed that tender, whereas we were seeing it for the first time at that meeting in November. But be it as it may, he wanted it approved as he was leaving. Whether there was any motive or not, I don't know, and I don't want to impute any motive to that.
No, I understand. Finally, at the meeting of the 20th of August, Minister Dipuo Peters asked Mr. asked Minister Radebe about the PRASA internal report. Asked for a copy of the report.
Yes, but I did say that the title of the report is not PRASA internal. It's the report to Minister Jeff Radebe on the board of PRASA, and it sets out what it says are recent events.
Yes.
And somewhere in the report, of course, there's a section that refers to PRASA in turmoil.
Yes, I just want to say, I know you are looking both at me and counsel as you answer. Remember to look more at me than him. Yes, thank you.
Now, on your understanding, Minister Radebe had the report because it was addressed to him.
He did have it.
When Minister Dipuo Peters asked for the report, what was Minister Radebe's response?
He said he did not have it.
Did that surprise you?
Well, Chairperson, I knew he had it because it came, the whistleblower brought it from his office and it was addressed to him. And clearly the manner in which the meeting was conducted found its basis in that report because it was about what Montana was saying largely.
Just to refresh my memory, this report, had you seen the report at the time of the meeting yourself?
I had seen it much earlier.
Yes.
But because it was such a sensitive document.
Yes. You did not, it was not official.
It was not official.
Yes, okay.
So, but
but it existed long before the meeting. That's the point you can make.
The report was written on the 27th of July.
Yeah. Yes.
The meeting took place around the 20th of August.
Okay, thank you. And so it was addressed to Minister Radebe. Yeah, okay.
I take it before the meeting, you would have told Minister Peters about this report.
I did, Chairperson. Not that day of the meeting, much earlier. I did say to her, I have seen this kind of a document. Of course, I had given it to the lawyers also to keep. Now I've been trying to get it from them. They don't know what they have done to it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had told the Minister Board Peters, and that is why in that meeting he said...
She asked for it.
She asked for it.
Yeah, okay.
Finally, in regard to that report, Ms. Molefe, I reiterate the invitation of the chairperson to make use of the facilities at the Commission. I am confident that if you gave them the laptop or computer where that was, they would find it.
Okay, thank you.
It's taken us a long time to get here, Mr. Molefe, but may I then ask that we go back
Did I talk too much?
No, sorry. We've been asking questions outside the ambit because, as the chairperson pointed out, this is pivotal to the work of the Commission, certainly in regard to PRASA. Can I then ask, you have this meeting with the President, and in the next topic you discuss is the dismissal of the board. Now, can you tell us, we know that on the 8th of March 2017, the Minister dismissed the board.
I'm sorry, Mr. Soni.
Sorry.
I may have misunderstood you, but I thought your plan was to take Mr. Molefe to the media articles briefly before you go to the meetings to highlight on the certain features.
Yes.
Or do you think that, I think it's important, he may have mentioned some of the things, but it is important, I think, to simply highlight some of the features in the articles before we go to the meeting, or is your plan different?
I was hoping that I would use the tea interval to pick out about 5 of the articles.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
But I could do it now. It's just that it may take a little longer because I could identify.
No, it's fine. You can do it later. Yeah.
So we know that the minister on the 8th of March 2017 purported to dismiss the board, and I say purported because that dismissal was set aside. But what were the reasons that led to that decision? You deal with it from paragraph 93 of your affidavit, Ms. Molefe.
What paragraph?
Oh, paragraph 93, Chairperson, page 24.
Yes, thank you.
Well, it starts off with the question of an appointment of appointing a replacement for Mr. Montana after he left on the 15th of July 2015.
The council, you asking what were the reasons for the dissolution of the board? Is that the question?
Yes, well, yeah. And what were the circumstances leading up to it?
And insofar as you are asked what the reasons were, Mr. Molefe, you must feel free to indicate what reasons were given by the minister for her decision and to say what, on your analysis of the situation, the reasons were, whether you agree that those were the reasons or you say the reasons were different for this and that reason. So I'll let you that, even though the question is put like that, there may be a difference. You might have a different view about what the reasons were to the reasons that were given by the minister.
The first point, Chairperson, is that Mr. Montana leaves because his contract is ending, and he says he doesn't want extension, but in reality, he wanted extension. He wanted another contract. And clearly, the minister herself, it's becoming, perhaps when you connect those dots, you now see that the minister is...
But I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Molefe, if as you give your evidence or as you answer any question, there is an aspect of connecting the dots that you think is appropriate to do there and then, feel free to do it, not wait until later. But later on, we can wrap up. But yes, so if it's convenient, connect the dots as you go along.
We'll do so, Chairperson. The board, as Montana left, wanted to appoint a new group CEO. And it had gone through an elaborate process of interviewing and had identified a person for that position. Now, in terms of the shareholders' compact and the memorandum of incorporation, the board needs to recommend to the minister, and then of course government has got its own protocols. She has then to take it to the president and to the relevant committee of the cabinet and come back. Cabinet must approve, because the cabinet approves appointment of group CEOs, directors generals, commissioners, chairpersons of board and directors, board of directors. She was reluctant. She had told me that she agrees with me, she's not going to change anything. She's just going to present it as it was. But no, there was no movement. And the next thing then, she wanted us to appoint, in an acting capacity, a person who was the chief financial officer in the Department of Transport, Mr. Collins Letswalo.
Before you proceed, Mr. Molefe, you said, I think, the board had conducted interviews and had identified a person that they believed could be Group CEO and had made a recommendation to the minister. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It may help, but if there are reasons, maybe there are reasons you might be reluctant, we might have to look at that. It might help if we know who was recommended. I say that because I've had evidence in regard to other SOEs where a board recommended a candidate for the position of Group CEO, and the board and the minister at the time gave evidence here and said she was in support of that candidate, but she said the former president made it clear to her that he wanted a certain person and no one else to take that position. Of course, the former president has denied saying that. and that will be dealt with later on. He must still come and give further evidence. So and I have, in regard to that matter, I asked whether this was a credible candidate and whether the former president, if he was not keen to have this person appointed, whether he questioned the qualifications or experience of that candidate. And I was told by the minister who gave that evidence that no, there was no questioning of the qualifications or experience of the candidate that was proposed. So it becomes important, it may become important to say, here is a candidate that was recommended, is a credible candidate, has got all the qualifications, has got all the experience. What was the problem with going with that candidate? So I mentioned that because it might be helpful. But if you have some reasons that make you reluctant to disclose, that's fine.
No, I will disclose it, Chairperson. It was a lady, I didn't know her before that, and I was not even in the panel that interviewed her. Her name was Laureate Mutipane Sisoko. She had previously worked for Metro Rail. Now,
let's just get the spelling, Laureate, and the surname. The surname at least.
Sisoko Mutipane.
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 Okay.
Modipane.
Okay.
Sisoko is Sesoko.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
She had worked for Metro Rail.
In what capacity?
She had been the CEO of Metro Rail, or the chief of Metro Rail, CEO of Metro Rail.
CEO, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is the train, the operating division of PRASA, which moves passengers.
Yes.
Which is fundamentally the mandate of PRASA.
So she had worked in a position that is very much the GCEO's position under PRASA.
Yes.
Yes.
But the minister never raised any concerns about that, except that they delayed. They were not moving. I'm sure, again, I can produce several letters to the minister. In some instances, when the minister would say, this board is not doing its job, or PRASA is not performing, I would say, the board is not operational. It cannot do the job. We need to have proper management team. And management team is put together by the group CEO. Approve the appointment of the group CEO so that we can get going, we can get our work done. And it was just delaying, and it's there. I'm sure correspondence would show that we raised that. So we don't know, but in hindsight now, when you look at the meeting of August, you look at the report where Montana says, and he writes it to Minister Jeff Hadeb, and the president says, I'm the best man. I'm available. This board doesn't want me to do my job. It's interfering with me. So what seems to have been then the reason is that they wanted to bring Mr. Montana back. But the way to do so is to block the appointment of a CEO and then ultimately to remove the board of directors. It's linked also to the investigations, because when Mr. Letsoalo, as you would see probably later on, comes into act, he says, and the minister says, Letsoalo must now be in charge of the investigations. Now, if you are investigating a management team that is corrupt, you don't know who's corrupt, who's not corrupt. You don't give it to them to do the job, because then you're not going to get the truth out of it. And that is why the board wanted this investigation to be done by an entity that is outside PRASA, which reports to the chair of the audit committee and the chairman of the board, and they would report regularly, together with investigators, to the board of directors and to the minister of transport, which is what we have done. But they wanted all of that out of the way, clearly to frustrate the investigation so that the investigations may not produce the truth about what is happening in the organization. I ask the question, why would they want to do that? If they are interested in getting the state-owned company to function and function properly.
Well, please, I want to see all of those letters you were talking about. So I want all of that evidence, because you are saying that the minister delayed for a long time to have a decision made, I guess, on your recommendation at the board. And at a certain stage, she told you what you said she told you. In regard the matter that I was talking about, I mean, it's in the public domain, evidence was given here. It's the filling of the position of Group CEO for Transnet after the departure of Ms. Ramos. Ms. Barbara Hogan gave evidence to the effect that the Transnet board at the time recommended Mr. Sipho Maseko for the position, and the board was of the opinion that Mr. Siyabonga Gama was not suitable for that position. He was a candidate, and in any event, there were some allegations of misconduct that the board was aware of them, but I think the evidence was the board said we just took into account whether he was suitable. You know, we left out of the account even the allegations, if I understood the evidence correctly.
Chairperson, I was in the commission when the minister gave her evidence.
Oh, you were here?
I was here.
Yes. So that position was not filled for over a year. So I'm wondering whether now the delays you are talking about after your board had made a recommendation as to who should fill the position of Group CEO reflect a pattern that may have been happening with the appointment of Group CEOs for some of the SOEs. So I would like all of that evidence, all of those letters, if you are able to get them, we would like them here.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Mr. Molefe, can I just go back to an issue you said, or you suggested what the game plan was, that they would frustrate the appointment of a group CEO, and then eventually Montana would come back as the group CEO. That's what you said. Well, I just want to say to you that...
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Soni. The connecting of the dots is quite important. And of course, anybody can come later and say, no, this connecting of the dots that you're talking about is not proper because of the following evidence that you have not had, Mr. Chairperson. But with regard to the group CEO for Transnet, there was that delay for the filling in of the position of group CEO, and the candidate who had been recommended by the board had to make his other plans because he was kept waiting for too long. And then Mr. Gama was dismissed after a disciplinary process at the end of June 2010. The position had become vacant, I think, early in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So already by mid-year 2010, there was still the position was not filled. Then the minister, Barbara Hogan, was dismissed from cabinet at the end of October. Another minister was appointed, and then the evidence will come later on. Then Mr. Gama was reinstated in February March, April 2011 to go back to his position as CEO of TFR. And then when Brian Molefe left for ESCOM, then Gama was made Group CEO of ESCOM, the position that was in contest when he was dismissed. So I just want to paint that picture because I want to see whether under PRASA the picture seems to go along the same lines or not.
With regard to PRASA chairperson, the position has been vacant now for close on to 5 years.
For how long?
5 years.
Since Montana has left.
Montana left. Now,
5 years.
Yes.
5 years. They have been appointing acting people, acting this, acting that, 5 years. And that is an organization that is managing 173 billion rand of rail and infrastructure investment. But the difference between Mr. Gama and Mr. Montana's case is that in the case of Mr. Gama, they were dealing with disciplinary processes. So once they had removed the minister and appointed another minister, they could simply lift the whatever suspension, bring him back. In the case of Mr. Montana, they cannot do that without burning their fingers because the investigations had gone so far and so much of the rot had been exposed, and there had already been cases in the courts of law which confirmed the correctness of the positions taken by the board of directors. So you need to have extraordinary courage to go against the judgments of the court and appoint a person who's mired in corruption, and there are still other pending cases, civil and otherwise. So it wouldn't have been difficult. It would have been difficult for them to bring him back now after the work we had done. But what I can't understand is why then not appoint a proper board. I must also say, by the way, Chairperson, since the departure of my board, PRASA has not had a properly constituted board. It had things called interim boards, which are not provided for in the law. It had all of those things. It now currently has an administrator, no board. I know that the minister has recently advertised he'll probably appoint the board soon. But that's what we are dealing with in a country with high levels of poverty, unemployment, crushing transport costs, and so on. So some of those questions would have to be asked later on to be explained by those to whom we have given the responsibility to govern our country.
Well, as I understand it, even up to now, since there's not been a group CEO appointed, is that right, since Montana left?
That is correct.
And how many years would it be? That position would have been
It's
vacant
approximately 5 years.
About 5
we
years.
asked Mr. Montana to leave in July 2015.
Oh, so that's about 5 years. Yeah, that's 5 years. And that can't be for lack of properly qualified candidates.
No, it can't be. It can't be.
Yeah.
Mr. Molefe, I don't know if you were here when Mr. Holele gave evidence. And just to come back to the point that they wanted to appoint Mr. Montana again.
I'm sorry, I think the witness would like some water. Water should have been placed before him. Actually, we are at 11:15. Maybe we should take the tea break. Yeah, and then when we come back, just make sure there is water for the witness. I see also I have no water here, so I think maybe the people concerned thought we don't need water in winter. It's too cold. Let's adjourn for the tea break. It's 11:15. We will resume at 11:30. We
As you
adjourn.
please.
Let's see.
No.
Yes, Mr. Soni, I ask that if possible, somebody should try and make sure that it's warmer here because it was quite cold.
It is.
I've asked them to bring me a small heater next to me, but I've asked that if there is a way of making it warm in the whole room, they should try and do that. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, may I ask one question relating to that issue which may assist you in joining the dots?
Yes.
Mr. Molefe, I don't know if you were here when Mr. Tiro Holele gave evidence. His evidence was in around February, March 2017, when they refused to pay an account from Prodigy, which is a company in which Mr. Roy Moodley has an interest. He asked them to pay the account, and when they said take it to court, his answer was, well, there are big changes coming, and that young man is coming back. Be careful you're not on the wrong side of history. So I'm just putting it in the context of your saying that they wanted Mr. Montana back. I'm putting that in context to say your theory may not be all that far-fetched.
No, it is correct, Chairperson. I did indicate that, and I said it's a pity that people wouldn't want to come and give evidence here, that I was advised that there was a teleconference with employees of PRASA, and they were encouraged by a minister, Mr. Khadeb, to continue the pressure, keep up the pressure on the board. This so-called PRASA in turmoil was in that context. Create that turmoil so that we can justify removing this board. You see, so it is exactly that. It had to get out of the way so that the young man may come back.
So there was a specific reference in the context of Prodigy to somebody saying the young man is coming back. Is that right?
You'll recall, Mr. Chairperson, both Mr. Holele and Mr. Akwata gave evidence that that's what Mr. Moodley said to them when they refused to pay and said, but the matter's in court.
Yes. And that was February,
March 2017.
Yes. Okay.
And if I could just put it also in context, they said changes are coming, and 3 weeks later there was a change in the ministry, and Minister Dipuo Peters was removed as Minister of Transport.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Mr. Moodley said changes were on the way.
That's right.
And you better make sure that when those changes happen, you are on the right side.
Yes.
And the young man is coming back.
That's
and you say not long after that, the minister was dismissed.
Yes.
Yes. And how long after that did your board get dismissed or disbanded? How long after did Mr. Molefe's board get disbanded? Was that much later?
On the 8th of March.
Okay. That is 2017.
2017.
And this meeting that Mr. Holele talked about with Mr. Moodley was when?
February, March 2017.
So soon after Mr. Holele had heard Mr. Moodley, Roy Moodley, saying changes were about to happen, the minister was fired, or before the minister was fired, she fired the board, and then she was fired.
She was fired, yes.
Okay, all right.
But Mr. Molefe's evidence deals partly with the change in guard in the
Yes,
ministry.
okay, all right. And of course, Mr. Molefe, you can confirm any of this insofar as you may know it yourself. What really?
She was dismissed the same month. Same month she was gone.
Okay.
I
Thank
suppose
you.
because she was too weak, she couldn't remove the board quickly enough.
She just repeat that. Just repeat that.
No, I say, Chairperson, that I think
Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Soni. I understand that the heater will make it warm in due course. It might take a little bit for some time in the whole room. So that's good news. And I'm hoping that the electricity people will make sure that we don't have these interruptions that we have been having. Okay, let's continue. Your mic.
Sorry, again, for context, Mr. Molefe, may I say that at the meeting of the 20th of August, you understood that Mr. Roy Mudley and Mr. Montana had been with the President before you and the Minister were called in.
That is correct.
And actually, your evidence was that you got a report that one of your protectors had seen them.
Yes.
In the premises.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Chairperson.
So let's now get to the dissolution of, before we do that, you say that Mr. Letsalo was unhappy about the Werksman's investigations.
I just want to make sure I don't lose track of where we are. At some stage before the break, you had asked Mr. Molefe to deal with the reasons for the dismissal or disbandment of the board.
Yes.
And I'd highlighted to him that in doing so, he might wish to tell me what reasons the minister gave and what reasons he believes are the true reasons if he is not in agreement with the reasons given by the minister. So you might be planning to do it later. I just want to make sure you have not lost track.
I want to do it because in the application that is brought, the judge deals with that very issue.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
So if I could just ask, there was unhappiness about the Werksman's investigation by the acting CEO whom the minister had installed. Would that be correct, Molefe?
That is correct.
Then on the 12th of August, you say that Minister Peters herself wrote to you to suggest that the investigations be stopped.
That is correct, Chairperson.
And that appears at Annexure PM7 to your affidavit at page 154.
For the record, just repeat what file we are still on, Mr. Sonny.
Yes. The letter from Minister Dipuo Peters is Annexure PM7, and it appears at page 154 of Bundle D, Exhibit SS6.
What's the page number again?
154, Chairperson.
154.
Yes.
But well, that's fine. I remember the letter very well.
Yes, we don't have to read the whole. If you could explain to the chairperson what the gist of the letter is, Ms. Molefe.
The starting point of the minister was to express concern that the investigation is not ending quickly, sooner, and that it was costing a lot of money. And she was saying that she thinks that we should be focusing on implementing performance plans, ensuring that our performance plans are in order and we are achieving results in that regard. She referred to the declining performance. And then she says, stop this, in fact, she uses the word close it.
Yes, you can read that paragraph because it is important. At the end of page 154, I therefore ask that you close off. It's the last paragraph. On page 154.
The previous page, Ms. Molefe.
At the
Right
bottom.
at the end. At the bottom of that page.
Yeah.
She's asking that we close it off and present a detailed report to her by, I think she said, by the end of August.
Yes. Should you not read that entire paragraph into the record?
Yes.
She says, I therefore ask that you close off this investigation process and consider the results or report thereof. Furthermore, the board is requested to submit a detailed report indicating the progress and the outcome of the investigation. A determination of any further investigation and a way forward will subsequently be made after studying the report in detail.
Yes, I think that.
Yes.
Or if you think there is some importance.
And then
on the
she says it will be highly appreciated if the report can reach my office by end August 2016.
Now,
and just to confirm, you were reading from a letter from the Minister of Transport at the time, Ms. Dipuo Peters, addressed to you, Mr. Dr. Popo Molefe, Chairperson of PRASA, and it's a letter that she signed on the 12th of August 2016. Yeah, thank you.
is that correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
You responded to that letter.
I did respond, Chairperson.
And what is the date of your response?
The date of my response was the 24th of August.
And is that the letter, or is that Annexure PM8, which is at 157, page 157?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Now, in your report, if you could, in your response, If you could summarize what you said to the Minister, Mr. Molefe.
In my response, the essence of my response, Chairperson, to the Minister was that we appreciated the concern that she raised, but that the concern that she raises, in our view, did not necessarily relate to whether the forensic investigation was necessary or not. And I went on to say, and if I may read,
yes, you
maybe
can
I should
read.
read it properly. Let me read that paragraph. The paragraph says, having acknowledged, of course, the letter of the Minister, I understand the concern raised not to relate to whether or not the forensic investigation is necessary. The Minister will indeed recall that the need for the forensic investigation was discussed and agreed at a meeting between the board and the Honorable Minister at the airport on 17th July 2015. Now, the airport here refers to the OR Tambo International Airport. And I go on to say that the concerns that I understand to be raised are that the forensic investigation is endless and without clear scope, constitutes excessive spending, is not budgeted for, and can be regarded as irregular expenditure. It is also indicated that the Minister's own preference is for the board to focus on the annual performance. That's what the Minister is saying there. And then, of course, Chairperson, it will be clearer on page 158, which is page 2 of the letter, that we go in detail to identify why it is necessary. We articulate why it is necessary for us to proceed with the forensic investigation. That Section 50, subsection 1 of the Public Finance Management Act was obliging the board to exercise the duty of utmost care to ensure reasonable protection of the assets and records of the public entity, act with fidelity, honesty, integrity, and in the best interest of the public entity in managing the financial affairs of the public entity. On request to disclose to the executive authority, who's then the minister, responsible for that public entity or the legislature to which the public entity is accountable, all material facts, including those reasonably discoverable, which in any way may influence the decisions or actions of the executive authority or that legislature. And the last point we make there is to seek within the sphere of influence of the accounting authority to prevent any prejudice to the financial interests of the state. Now, this is what the law says we should do. And that is what we are doing. And we are doing it, Chairperson, against the backdrop of a management that had stolen records of the company, covering up, not cooperating with our investigation. Naturally, it would take long for forensic investigators to uncover things. Because you do mirror imaging of computers, you got to go to the server, you do things that ordinarily management should have been willing to give to the investigators so that we could do our job quickly. Now the minister says, no, you're taking too long, stop. The view then which we took, Chairperson, was that whilst we appreciate the concerns raised by the Minister, but we would not stop the investigation.
Well, before you do that, I think your reference in your letter at page 158 to section 51(1) is also important. Do you want to just read that part A and B? Where you say section 51(1) provides for the following general responsibilities of the board. Do you want to just read that part?
Yes, Chairperson, section 51, subsection 1 provides for the following general responsibilities of the board, and I'm referring here to the Public Finance Management Act. Must take effective and appropriate steps to collect all revenues due to the public entity concerned and prevent irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, losses resulting from criminal conduct and expenditure not complying with the operational policies of the public entity, and manage available working capital efficiently and economically. Now,
Yes.
and then I go on to say the above obligations, that is section 50, subsection 1, and general responsibilities, section 51, subsection 1, are precisely what necessitated the embarking upon forensic investigations and the litigation that followed it.
And then then you deal with each of the concerns. In paragraph 1 on page 159, you say that the investigation, contrary to what the minister says, was not irregular. Is that the essence of paragraph 1?
That is correct, Chairperson. Before we appointed the panel, the investigators, we asked the legal department of PRASA to advise on the law firms that were on the panel and those that had the capacity also for forensics. And they referred us to Worksmith. Of course, it would appear, of course, when they gave us that information, they omitted to tell us that, in fact, they should have established a new panel. The time for that old panel had expired, that they should have invited professional companies and established a new panel. But that only became apparent when one read the Auditor General's report.
Then you deal with her concerns about the scope of the investigation, and in paragraph 2, you say the scope had been determined in the first subparagraph of paragraph 2 by matters that had been identified by the Auditor General, and in the second subparagraph you say the matters raised by the Public Protector. Would that be correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
And then you make the point that it is the Public Protector who had required that all contracts above 10 million rand should be investigated.
It is so, Chairperson.
And that in the pursuit of those investigations, the PRASA had embarked on litigation. You say that at paragraph 160. You say that in the last
page
paragraph.
160.
Yes. The litigation that has flowed from the investigation requires the assistance of forensic investigation team.
That is correct.
And you make the point that ironically, it is those very people who benefited from the unlawful activities who are using those unlawful proceeds to fight PRASA with.
Yes, Chairperson, the point we're making was that we are being told you're taking too long. Stop the investigation. But in order for anybody to launch an effective application in a court of law with the possibility of achieving success, you need to have solid evidence. And we are saying the people we are litigating against are actually using the money of PRASA to fight PRASA. And that is the irony of the whole thing. So if we stop the investigation, they succeed. And because these matters are being so politicized, they would say, after all, they never had a case. It's just that they want to victimize me, as has been the charade of the narrative of Mr. Montana throughout.
And then you make the point that right at the end of page 160, that Siangena had benefited to the tune of 800 million rand, and that it had also sought a guarantee on page 161 of 1.1 billion rand.
That is correct, Chairperson.
And that, at that stage, had the Siangena review proceedings been instituted?
I do think so, Chairperson. Yeah.
Yes, it was instituted in 2016.
Yeah, I do think so.
Well, maybe it's important to highlight the next sentence at page 160. The next sentence after the sentence that deals with what you just said, Mr. Molefe, namely that people who had gained money from PRASA unlawfully were using that money to fight PRASA in the courts. You then say, this is at page 160, an example of this is the guarantee, you put guarantee in quotes, that obliges PRASA to pay almost 800 million rand to Siangena. As we have previously advised the Minister, this document was not known by any PRASA official. We are still awaiting the reply to the letter addressed to your office in this regard. Siangena have now instituted legal proceedings against PRASA, claiming payment of an amount of approximately 1.1 billion rand related to this very guarantee in quotes.
So the point we're making, Chairperson, there is that here is it, we go to court, suddenly Siangena produces a document and they say, you PRASA have given us a guarantee of 800 million. Here's where somebody signed. And we had never seen that document anywhere. Management of PRASA, who might have been there at the time, were not helping to defend the interests of the company. So this is what we mean. People use your money to fight you. And at this stage, if I recall well, Chairperson, it was just after we had lost a case against Siangena on a technicality based on the Paja rule, which of course later on, following the Gijima or Guma matter, the
there was a change. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Molefe, Ms. Ngoye's evidence on this is that after the review proceedings, the first review proceedings were instituted in 2016, in response, Siyangena brought an interdict requiring payment of this money, and that was the first time that it had been discovered that there was such a contract, that addendum for 800 million rand. Is that what you're referring to?
That is what I'm referring to.
And that is a contract that was signed by Mr. Montana at the end of September 2014. Is that your recollection?
I don't have the details of the contract for now, yeah. But he would have been the one signing as the GCE of the company.
I know that I've had evidence, I can't remember whether from you or from Ms. Martha Ngoye, I've had evidence of a document that PRASA officials were looking for, or rather, were looking for and they couldn't find, which had been signed, I think, by Mr. Montana, apparently without any knowledge of any PRASA official. Do you know whether the document you are talking about, which Siyangena produced when they took you to court, is that document, or you are not sure because you have said that PRASA officials seem not to know about that document until then. Would you know whether that's the same document, or you might not know?
That would have been the same document. For me, it arose out of the investigations that were conducted by our investigators.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairperson. When we continue Ms. Ngoye's evidence, we will produce that document.
You spoke away from the mic, so that won't be reflected on the transcript. Yes, just start again.
So when we produce, when we lead Ms. Ngoye's further evidence, that will be one of the documents to which you will be referred.
Okay, thank you.
The Chairperson, earlier on, I did say in one of my interventions that in one of the letters written to the minister, I had raised concern about her persistently telling the board to perform, yet the board did not have the management team. I see that I deal with that question in the same reply to the minister, and it is at page 163.
Yes.
And it is the last paragraph of
that letter.
Of that
at page 163. Do you want to read that paragraph into the record?
The paragraph reads as follows, and again is the paragraph of the letter written by the chairman of the board of directors, myself at the time, to Minister of Transport on the 24th of August 2016. It says, the minister indicated that notwithstanding the completion of an independent, robust process to recruit a permanent group CEO, the minister's view was that PRASA was not ready for such an appointment. The reason we had consulted the minister around our recommendations for the position of the group CEO was that we felt that the appointment of a permanent group CEO will assist with stability. We, however, deferred to the minister's preference to second the acting group CEO from the Department of Transport.
Now, just for the sake of completeness. So you had made a recommendation to the minister of a candidate for appointment as Group CEO. And what you are saying in this paragraph is that the minister's response was that PRASA was not ready for the appointment of a Group CEO.
She says so, but she says so after waiting for a very long time.
A very long time, yes, yes.
I hope there could be other letters where I consistently said to her, we wrote to you, we gave you recommendations. Can we please appoint?
Yes, yes. Yeah. So it sounds a very strange response to me. Did she clarify why she thought PRASA was not ready for a permanent Group CEO? I would have thought that any organization needs a leader, a permanent leader, like yesterday. I don't understand the idea of an organization not being ready for a permanent leader.
She didn't explain what she meant, but clearly, as one would see, this happens after several meetings, including that meeting with the president, where an attempt was made to bring Mr. Montana back. Of course, one of the reasons that they tried to use to justify that was contained in this report to Mr. Khadebe of Mr. Montana, which we are looking for, which says that, the Organization for African Unity had adopted a resolution that committed South Africa to becoming a manufacturing hub for rail and rolling stock for the African continent. And they say that you therefore need a person with knowledge of this business like Mr. Montana in that thing.
So that seems to
So, but she doesn't say it here, but I'm saying it from my own
interactions.
Interactions with them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, I just wonder if I can ask the witness to confirm, because it may be important. Bongani has managed to locate a document that may well be the document that the witness was talking about.
Oh, you want to show the witness?
I just want to show the witness.
Yeah, show the witness.
Because then we can run out copies.
In the meantime,
deal with it.
Yeah.
Does it say report? Not letter to minister. Not a letter.
Yeah, they'll bring it to you, Mr. Molefe. They'll bring it to you.
You are clever, eh? See? I know I want to check it. Just want to check it properly. Yeah. Yeah, this is the document. Because you see that. So what do you want me to do?
I'm sorry, your mic is off. You just switched off.
Chairperson, this is the document I was talking about, a report on recent developments at PRASA, and it was addressed to Minister Jeff Khadebe, who at the time was responsible for monitoring and evaluation in the presidency.
Yes. Okay. No, at least now we know.
I'm just worried that we might lose it again.
Yes, no, we mustn't lose it. I think what Mr. Soni has in mind is that once you have confirmed, as you have, that it is the document, they can immediately start printing it and securing it to make sure that we don't lose it, and making sure they can give you a copy if you need a copy, or you might have a copy. And then Mr. Soni, you can then see whether you would let Mr. Molefe deal with the document later or when.
Yes.
Yeah.
We thought once we've got the copies, we'll be able to...
Yeah, because you might need to read it as well first, But at least now that we have got it, I think that's very important,
It's a big find.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Molefe, is there anything else in your letter? Oh, there's just one part of your letter that I want to refer to, and that's at 165, where after all those bullet points in the middle of the letter, you say, the board does not have a reason to stop the investigation at this point, and is satisfied that stopping the investigation will be harmful to PRASA. That was the stance of the board. Would I be correct?
I wanted to go earlier to an earlier
sorry, please do. I don't want to.
Well, of course, council can guide me, but I thought on paragraph 5, I don't know if council wouldn't like us to...
Remember to look this side. Yes, as you give
Chairperson,
evidence.
I wonder if council wouldn't like to read that.
Yes. So
is there a part you would like to read on the letter?
There's a part I'd like to read.
Yeah, please read it.
Is paragraph 5 of the
Yes,
same
page
letter.
164.
Page 164, and it
Yes,
says,
read it.
the caption is whether the investigation should be stopped and a detailed report be submitted to the minister. And it goes on to say, as we indicated to the minister at the meeting of 17 July 2015, and as clearly indicated from the above excerpts of the PFMA, we believe that the board has the responsibility to institute and to continue with the forensic investigations in its capacity as the accounting authority of PRASA. We are satisfied that the investigation is necessary, is not irregular, is cost-effective, and assists with easing some of the operational bottlenecks created by the past blatant failure to observe the law. I don't know, Chairperson, if I should stop there.
If that was the important part, that's fine. But if there is another important part, you can indicate.
And then
Our council will indicate if there is another part he wants you to look at.
And you are quite right, Mr. Molefe, that is an important point. But the point I want to make is that when you say the board doesn't have a reason, what you are saying to the minister is, in terms of section 50 and 51 of the PFMA, the board must act according to its own conscience and its own belief and its own understanding about its responsibilities, and can't take instructions from even the minister. Would I be encapsulating that properly?
to the extent that the instructions are in conflict with the law, the board is not obliged to take those instructions, Chairperson.
And you were making that point very firmly.
That's the point we're making, and that's why I went back to that paragraph again, because it's restated that. And that's why probably the public should understand. Because sometimes people say, but what is wrong with this chairperson?
You are disobeying the
Or
political
disobeying
aids.
the leadership.
Yes.
Is the president, is the
Yes.
minister. Why don't you just keep quiet and do as they tell you? But in the end, I think I have my own responsibility and my own integrity also to protect. I might not be holding a high position in society, but I've also been a leader, and I know the values and principles that have inspired me, guided me, and why I'm involved in what I'm involved in, and why it is necessary, therefore, not to acquiesce in anything that violates those values and principles.
And one of the values that the Constitution imposes on all repositories of power
Yes.
is that they must exercise power in an accountable manner. That's exactly what you were saying to the minister.
That is correct.
And then you say, right at the end of that paragraph, perhaps you should read the next paragraph, because this just goes to the state of knowledge of the minister, where you say we have endeavored. If you could read that into the record, Mr. Molefe.
Am I sure? Oh, okay, Chairperson, thanks. That is page 165.
Yes.
Just above the 3 bullet points at the bottom there. We have endeavored to keep you abreast of the progress of the investigation. This has been done through, amongst others, a meeting with you in Rivonia focusing on the preliminary irregularities found in the Sifambo contract. This meeting was held on 28 August 2015. A meeting at Worksmen Attorneys during November after the launch of the review application in respect of Sifambo contract. The last written report was on the 7th of July 2016. And of course, we go further to say it is regrettable that on 1 July 2016, I requested a meeting with the board for you to address it on a number of issues, including this investigation. However, to date, we have not yet received a response.
Yes.
And then I go on page 166, Chairperson, is the paragraph, first paragraph on that page. And now I'm speaking on behalf of the board, and I go on to say, it is my considered view that it would be a sad day for the department as a shareholder and for the citizens of South Africa if this investigation does not reach its logical conclusion. I trust that this clarifies the board's stance in this regard. We shall, in correspondence to follow by the end of August, provide you with a detailed report on the forensic investigations undertaken by Worksmen's attorneys or on the board's instructions.
Now, what, sorry, you wanted to say something.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Sonny. Just raise your voice.
Sorry, I was going to ask a question, but I understood the witness one. No, please, Mr. Molefe, you...
No, let me...
Yes, please drink. Yeah, you may drink water so that we can proceed. So there is no problem, because otherwise if we adjourn each time.
No, Chairperson, that report was given to the minister, and as the Chairperson should by now be aware, we were regularly reporting to the minister on a range of sensitive issues. And the minister obviously accounts to the president and the cabinet. I expect that she would have been reporting to the cabinet as well. So it then means that the government would have become aware of the seriousness of the levels of corruption that were taking place in an organization that is expected to spend 173 billion rand over 20 years.
Well, in keeping with what you said, Ed, and what you have just said, I think it's important to look at the last paragraph, page 165 of your letter. You say that it is regrettable, writing to the minister, that on 1 July 2016, I requested a meeting with the board for you to address it on a number of issues, including the investigations. However, to date, we have not yet received a response. So I guess it shows some of the occasions where you were even affording the minister the opportunity to address the board on various issues, but there were delays in getting a response. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Chairperson.
Thank you.
Now, the matter that you referred to, the investigation, was the Swifambo investigation. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Now, that is the one where the Supreme Court of Appeal and the High Court said there was corruption, and the Constitutional Court refused to grant leave to appeal against the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Then, well, not soon thereafter, this was on the August 24th, but the next milestone that happened is the minister dissolves the board.
That's correct.
You say that she dissolved the board on the 8th of March. Now, when she dissolved the board, did she give any reasons?
Maybe just before you answer, Mr. Molefe, just to make sure we get everything in proper sequence. I think you said earlier on the board was dissolved by the minister on the 8th of March 2017. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did the dissolution take place by way of the minister making an announcement in Parliament?
That is so, Chairperson. The minister went to send the acting director general in the Department of Transport to read to Parliament, the Portfolio Committee on Transport, a letter, the announcement that the board has been dissolved. Of course, on the same day, letters were sent to each one of us as directors. I was not well on that day, so I couldn't go to Parliament. I had just had an eye surgery. But on the same day, I wrote several letters to the Speaker of Parliament, to the Chair of the Portfolio Committee, dealing with what I felt was not the correct way of managing, exercising oversight on the affairs of PRASA, but also asking the Speaker of Parliament to initiate an inquiry on transport.
Now,
on PRASA.
So it's not the minister who made the announcement in Parliament. It's the DG. It
was the acting DG.
But reading a letter from the minister.
From the minister.
And the DG was reading that letter to the Portfolio Committee of Transport.
That is correct.
Now, before this letter was read before the Portfolio Committee, had you already been alerted by the minister that your board was going to be dissolved?
Not at all, Chairperson.
Yes.
Not at
yes. Okay. So, and did you get to know about it for the first time when maybe the media reported about what was happening in the portfolio committee before you got the official letter from the minister, or did you get the minister's letter first? Then you heard that the letter had been read in.
I was called, Chairperson, by one of our directors who was a delegate at the portfolio committee meeting.
Yes.
And he calls me, he says, you are no longer my chairman, you are not chairman anymore, because you've got no board now. You are out, you've been fired. And he explains to me what happened in Parliament. And then, of course, when I checked my email box, I found that a letter had been sent to me advising me that I have been dismissed.
That seems a very strange way of one would have thought that the board would be informed first, or at least to be alerted. So unless the letter had been sent first to try and achieve that, but because you might not have been alerted that there was a letter, an important letter, urgent letter that you should expect in your emails, then you only got to see it later.
My recollection, Chairperson, is that the date on the letter is the 8th of March as well.
Same
but
day.
Besides, Chairperson,
Yes.
there's a separation of powers between the legislature and the executive.
Yes.
The executive is not obliged to go and dismiss the board in a portfolio committee meeting. The minister should meet with the board of directors, discuss her concerns. Well, the minister appoints and dismisses directors. So if she does it properly, follows process, we would not even have gone to court. But precisely because we too could not understand why she chose to act in a manner in which she did, we thought it was improper for us to allow abuse of power, abuse of authority in the manner in which it was done.
I know that previously I asked you a question and I think you gave me an answer as to whether this particular minister, Minister Popo Peters, whether if you look at her approach or attitude towards the board when the board started and later in the life of the board, whether her attitude towards the board might have changed. And I think, if I recall correctly, that the impression I got was that you thought her attitude towards the board changed at a later stage. Is that right?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes, yes.
And my view is that it all centers around the investigation.
Yes, yes.
And the fact that the board is perceived to be stubborn.
Yeah.
When it is told, don't do this, don't investigate, it says, no, we will investigate because we have fiduciary duties to discharge.
Yes.
So everything centers around this, this investigation, the disclosures that were beginning to emerge from that investigation.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Molefe, again, just expanding on the theme raised by the chairperson. The minister, through the DG, acting DG, announces the dismissal of the board on the occasion at which the board was appearing before the portfolio committee.
That is correct.
Now, as I understand it, you didn't go to that meeting, but the rest of the board members went.
Well, a significant number of directors, we normally feel that you don't have to take the entire board to a portfolio committee and spend money in hotels and air tickets unnecessary. So normally we take a reasonable number with the executives, executive management, to go, particularly the group CEO, the chief financial officer, and the company secretary.
And that is quite an expensive.
That is what.
But that is quite an expensive business to go to the portfolio committee from Pretoria in Cape Town.
That is correct.
Now, if the minister was dismissing the board and had reflected on this, one would imagine that she would have done it before the portfolio committee actually met, because that would have saved that expense.
That would have been the case. Or after the portfolio committee has met and after the board had discharged its duties to the portfolio committee, because they had to report, had to account. It didn't matter if after a week or so she decided, now you've done your job, go. But then she does it in the manner in which she did, and which means actually this is fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Well, I don't know whether Mr. Soni was going to ask this question, but I want to ask this question. You have had time to reflect on the events that happened throughout the term of office of your board at PRASA. Are you able to say whether on your analysis of the events, there was that the dismissal of your board happened on the day on which the board was appearing before the portfolio committee was a mere coincidence, or is there some significance in the convergence of the board's appearance before the committee and the dismissal? And I see you said the letters were signed on the 8th, on the same day. Is there a certain significance in these two things happening on the same day, or the dismissal happening on the day when the board is appearing before the committee? Or was it a coincidence, or is it a matter you have not had time to reflect on, or you would prefer not to leave it to other people to analyze it?
Chairperson, the difficulty one has is that there appears to be a group of people, some of them ministers, including the president, and members of parliament, who, while they may go to conferences and adopt resolutions on corruption, but they don't mean what they say. They don't mean to fight it. So everything pivots around the investigation, the fight against corruption. So it's an all-round mobilization of various vast instruments at the disposal of those who don't want to confront corruption. And they were found, that portfolio committee, maybe council might later take us to the letter I wrote to the chair of the portfolio committee.
Yes. No.
That portfolio committee itself says, we don't want this board, dissolve it. Now, it's not their duty to say to a minister, dissolve the board. The minister has got the executive authority. She must decide whether the board is serving its purpose or not. But they say all of those things. They are not saying to the minister, we want you to account for staying for such a long time without a group CEO for such an important company. And somebody was reminding me, by the way, that it was not only the CEO, the group CEO. The company also did not have the group chief financial officer. It has to put in place financial controls. It must ensure that it manages the finances of the business allocated to it by National Treasury through Parliament properly. But there's no chief financial officer. The oversight committee that should be demanding this thing is not saying it. It's worried about, why are you keeping the chairperson of the board? Why are you keeping this board? Why don't you get them out? So I think the minister reached a point where she had to pander to this thing, to the demands of the portfolio committee. Secondly, the meeting we had with President and Minister Jeff Radebe was sending a clear message that we don't want this board. We don't want this board. We don't want this chairman. So it must go. So I had said earlier on in my evidence, Chairperson, that there was something that I had also found strange, that whilst professional organizations could investigate all kinds of things vetted through their normal regulatory bodies and so on, in the case of this investigation, there was a demand that National State Security Agency should vet the people who were investigating at PRASA. That investigation had begun to shake the tree, so much that there was a lot of discomfort in many quarters, which sometimes make you wonder whether many of these people were not aware of the wrongs that were happening at PRASA, and whether they themselves were not beneficiaries of what was happening there in one way or the other. So I think the dismissal of the board was planned, was being discussed elsewhere, and it was staged in such a way that it must give maximum publicity and embarrass the directors. I would have expected the minister to call at least me as the chair of the board to say, don't be surprised. I have considered this and that about your board, and I've arrived at a conclusion that we should dissolve it. I would probably have said, yeah, but minister, let's at least arrange for you to meet with the board so that you can explain to us and maybe then tell us to go at that meeting.
Is there, to your knowledge, was there anything that the minister or anyone else might have expected that the board would say before the portfolio committee that the minister or somebody else might not have wanted the board to get the chance to say? Because the moment you are dismissed, I take it that the portfolio committee might say, you have no, once you are no longer a board, we have no business asking you any questions, so you stop this appearance before the portfolio committee the moment you announce that the board is dismissed. Do you know whether there was anything that the board may have been expected to say that somebody might not have wanted the board to say before the portfolio committee, or you would not be sure?
The purpose for the board appearing before the portfolio committee is to account for its work of the preceding year. Now, naturally, given what we had been busy with, the board was going to have to talk about rampant corruption, the litigations that were underway. They would have had to talk about the police refusing to do their job, many reports that we had given to them, civil actions taken, and so on. They would not have loved that to happen. And one of the things that would probably have featured there would have been what appears in the Sefambo matter, where monies were paid to individuals who came to say, look, you're going to get this big contract. You got to share that money with somebody. So all of those things may well have been things that made people restless at the time.
Thank you. I don't know with how everyone feels. It feels like the aircon the heater is taking too long to make us warm. I don't know. But maybe when we come back after lunch, it will be fine. I think you wanted to ask some questions before we adjourn.
I want to just raise a matter. Chairperson, you have raised something that I'd not thought about and I'd not asked the witness to think about. But perhaps we could raise it because the witness has mentioned 2 letters that he had written. One to the Speaker of Parliament and the other to the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. Certainly the letter to the Speaker of Parliament is dated the same day as they are dismissed. And it may be after the witness has looked at it, he can reflect again as to whether there is a connection between the timing of the dismissal and the issues you have raised. It's only occurred to me now, Chairperson. But it is something that I submit needs to be considered.
It does need to be looked at because it's quite extraordinary.
Indeed.
That the minister, who I assume would have known in advance that the board would be appearing before the portfolio committee on a certain date, doesn't dismiss the board before that, but actually dismisses the board on the day or when they are supposed to appear. And I would imagine that if she dismissed the board before the date, she would have achieved the same thing if part of her concern was that the board was going to reveal certain things.
Indeed.
But it may well be that coinciding the dismissal with the date of the board's appearance before the commission, before the portfolio committee, might have been based on some other reason. And I think Mr. Molefe has mentioned that also it might have been intended to embarrass the board and to get a lot of publicity for that.
Full clear publicity.
Yeah, so after lunch we can wrap that up.
Yes.
Okay, I see it's 2 minutes past 1. Let's take the lunch adjournment and we will resume at 2 o'clock.
As you please.
We adjourn.
It is so cool.